Hello and welcome back to another Theory Thursday. Today we are going to the iPad and doing a chord analysis. The tune, All By Myself, Irving Berlin, published in 1921 but not introduced until 1922. That's what we're doing today. I've got my Timex Weekender, on today, and I'm wearing my brown knit tie. And that's what we got going on. As always, if you've been enjoying the tune videos, theory videos, just the music videos, solo videos, any of it, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Of course, not necessary. Just keeps the channel going and the community growing. So I think that's it. Without further ado, chord analysis, All By Myself, Irving Berlin. Let's go. Here we go. Chord analysis, All By Myself. First things first, what key are we in? You can see we are, in the key of C. As seen by the key signature here, first chord is a C, and our last chord is a C. So, dead giveaway. We're in the key of C. So, let's get these out of the way. Easy one chords. Now, for this next section, let's take a look at where we're going, because this chord is out of the key, but take a look at where this thing ends up going. We do end up getting to a G7, which is a 5 chord. Write that in. And this little section is a 2 of 5 and a 5 of 5. So it's kind of like a dragged out. We get this 5 of 5. A G7 could happen right here, but we get this little 2-5 to get to G7. So they kind of drag it out. Okay, let's keep rolling. This is a dead giveaway. 2, 5 in the key of C. And of course, they don't give it to us. We get a deceptive cadence here. It's a 3 chord. However, we can write this as a minor 3 chord. You could write this as a major 6 chord. However, it's more playing to where we're going. So let's look ahead again. Let me erase this. And this phrase ends right here. We get our 1 chord again. Okay, I'll just put these in because they're easy. Let's look at what happens right before that. We get a 2-5. Okay, so this is just acting as a setup for this 2 chord, for this 2-5 in the key of C. So while you could write this as a minor 3 chord and a major 6 chord, what's actually happening here is this is a 2-5 of 2. Right? If we're looking at the key of D, E minor, and A7, we get a little 2-5 to D. Okay, so let's keep going. Now this is weird. Let's take a look at this. This is completely outside the key, but take a look at where we're going. This is a major 3 chord. However, usually when you see an E7 in the key of C, that means we're getting a 5 of 6. And if we keep looking ahead here, you can see we do end up getting to that 6 chord. So that's this. And this is turning out to be a 2-5 masterclass. It's a 2 of 3 and a 5 of 3. And we do end up getting this E chord. So this is just Irving Berlin is putting on a masterclass here of wherever you're trying to get to, throw a 2-5 before it, and your listener is going to have no problem getting there. So this is a, I write that a little bit better, 6 chord. Now this is a cool one. This we don't see that often. Take a look at where we're headed. We're going to D7. So first thing to look at is the actual chord here. A minor 7 flat 5. Now the 5 of a D chord is an A7. So they could have just thrown an A7 here and been on our merry way. Instead, we get this cool stepwise bass motion. E flat down to D. Okay. The other cool thing about this, so you could just call this a passing chord if you wanted. And I think that is what we're going to call this because it's 2 beats, and we do end up getting to this D chord with a chromatic bass. But the cool thing about this bass note also is that it is a tritone sub. So if we were to throw an A7 here, that would be a dominant 7. But a tritone away from that is E flat. And that's exactly what we have in the bass here. So it's kind of like you could think of it as a tritone sub, but we're going to call it a passing chord just because of that chromatic movement from the E flat to the D. But you could call it a weird tritone sub. Now, this is a 5 of 5, which you do see we do end up getting here in a roundabout way again. So here's our 2 chord, this is our 5 chord, and here we get this thing again. So what's the 5 of G? You could throw a D7 here if you wanted. But no, they don't do that. They do this cool stepwise motion in the bass. And same thing, A flat is a tritone away from D. So you could call this a weird tritone sub again. But we're going to call it passing because that's kind of what it is. Okay, so it's a 2, it's a 5, and then of course we get our 1. Oops, don't clear that. 1, easy peasy. 1, easy peasy. And now we're starting to repeat phrases. So just like up above here, we get our 5 of 5. They don't give it to us right away. We get a 2 of 5 and a 5 of 5 again. So it's a 2, 5. And then they finally do get our 5 chord, get a 2, 5 in the key of C. And then of course they don't give it to us. And this they do change because if you remember up at the top, we got this long stretch, this 3, 6, 2, 5 to 1, which is a very common progression in jazz. But we get this E7 here, which is a little deviation from the top. So you could write this as a major 3. However, the act here is usually when you see an E7 in the key of C, that means usually means we're heading to an A minor. So this whole thing is acting as a 5 of 6. So that's this whole thing. A little deceptive cadence. And then still, he drags us out. We don't get our A minor. We get a 4 chord. We get a passing chord. We get our 1 chord in this real cool progression here. Let's see where it's going. We get a 5 of 3. Now this is the same thing we saw above, right? This A7 is where we're headed, which is a 5 of 2, right? Going to D minor. And if to get to this A7, the easy way to do that would just be throw an E7 on there, right? Because that's the 5. But they don't do that. E minor 7, flat 5 with a B flat in the bass. So check out this bass line. C, down a half step to B, down a half step to B flat, down 1 more half step to A. That is cool bass-wise motion, bassline motion. So you could call this passing. You could call it that weird tritone sub. It's mostly chromatic, just in that bass line is what's going on. So we get this A7, which leads our ear to think we're going to be getting a 2 chord, and of course they don't give it to us. Irving Berlin keeps dragging this out with 2 5s. So here we eventually get that 2 chord. Right, so let's fill this in. We do eventually get our 2 5 1, but not before we do a 2 5 and a 5 of 5 And then one more phrase, 2-5, 2R1 chord. Now to bring it back all around, it's just our classic 6, 2, 5. Easy peasy. So, I mean, this really is a masterclass on 2-5s and elongating phrases. Here. I mean, deceptive cadence city. Try to get to an E7, throw a 2-5 in. These passing chords are real hip. But yeah, all these 2-5s everywhere. I mean, it's just a masterclass. I mean, there's a reason he was a great composer. So anyway, I think that's enough info for today. That's a chord analysis of all by myself, Irving Berlin. Hopefully you learned something, or just put this on in the background at least while you're doing something else. It's good practice for me anyway. Anyway, we'll see you for the next one.